thanks again all for joining and taking the time. A few bits of housekeeping. So we'll be running through a fairly big agenda, lots to discuss in this space, and I'm certain there's lots more to discuss afterwards as well. Feel free to ask questions in the chat as you go. Often, as a question arises, the best time to ask. We've got some good time at the end, hopefully, to field some of those questions, and certainly anything that we don't get to, we'll address afterwards from a webinar perspective. So, as I said, the aim of today is to make this discussion extremely informative for you, invoke some curiosity into the topics we cover off. And I hope that goes a long way for you guys to carry that into your organizations and benefit the business and the clients. So let me just get my slide working here. So we'll kick in. So yeah, most of you will know Scott and I, but we've got a good cohort of clients here today. So good to see you all again. But Scott is the founder and CEO of IT Integrity a quarter of a century ago. It's quite the milestone. Well done, Scott, and the team that supported you to date. And I sit in the business as the client success or chief client officer, managing our client outcomes and our growth teams. So we'll be talking you through various parts of the agenda today. So as I said, bit to cover. Scott's going to kick into the discussion with the overall landscape. What are the drivers, priorities, the reality of that threat landscape, and in particular the impacts to organizations and boards. I'll touch on the AI versus AI discussion. How threat actors are using AI to accelerate their capabilities, and what we've got to do as organizations and recipients of that to accelerate our maturity as well. We'll be going into some of the approaches that IT Integrity is taking as a strategic partner for a lot of our clients in this space, and that approach is universal and can be applied to many organizations. So we'll be looking at that. And then again, I'll throw back to Scott to talk through the people part of that, the governance, the tool, and life beyond the tools, if you will. So for those of you that don't know us, IT Integrity, we're a partner that likes to consider ourselves slightly different to most. We have a broad spectrum capability across the technology stack. We're a governance-led organization. We start with understanding your organization, your strategies, and your goals, and apply those to the technology investment decisions that we recommend and make alongside you. We harness that independent innovation, so we don't have, we're a very solution-led organization. So we're looking at what you've made investments in and looking to enhance and evolve those. And that sort of helps us capture your uniqueness in your technology continuous improvement journey. We are everything from board to support. So boardroom to frontline. We're talking to our clients around strategy and innovation, right through to being the first person that answers the phone and helps them with a password reset or what it might be. So a handful of clients that we support there, and we've got a national footprint, which it's a really exciting business to be a part of. And I will hand over to Scott now, who will talk us through his section.
Hi everyone, and welcome. Thanks for making the time to join us today. Really, this session is about providing some education for clients and for the people that we're interacting with. As Steve mentioned, and thanks Steve for the intro, I started IT Integrity 25 years ago, so I'm going to touch just a little bit on the difference of what was around 30 years ago to now, and there's some interesting little facts that I'll touch on, but really, this session is about setting the scene for what cybersecurity looks like, and the impacts of AI on cyber, And that also then really just flows through to a lot of the tools that, we'll talk a fair bit about that, but I'm probably going to cover things more from a high level to start with. And really what I suppose thought was the best thing to do is to start from what matters to the boards and leadership teams in organizations. I've been privileged enough to spend a bit of time um, working through with the team at AICD. Did a director's course. Steve, I think you need the next slide. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, did a director's course last year, and there's a lot of for those of you who are members, and for those of you who maybe aren't, there's a lot of really good information that they produce and provide, which is very much relevant to the Australian market. So I've got a graph out of one of their publications here. And what this is really showing is that at a board level, in today's world, cyber security, cybercrime, data security, it is the highest risk and the biggest concern that boards are dealing with. The interesting thing here is if you look at the growth in the impact of AI, it's the fastest growing concern of boards at the moment. So, it's this sort of led me to have a little bit of an investigation, and I sort of went back to my initial commencement in the technology sector, 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, if you had a technology job, technology was often called EDP, an EDP department. I was working through with our marketing people to put this together, and they had to Google what EDP was. So for those of you who maybe haven't been around as long as me, that was all electronic data processing, and so that was typically like the back room. Wasn't IT rarely had a seat at the table 30 years ago from a management point of view. So it was very much a back of house operational piece. And then I sort of had a bit of a look, 30 years ago, the top 10 companies in the world. Interestingly, Microsoft and Intel were in that top 10, and this is more from a market cap point of view. So, Microsoft, Intel, and then you had a number of pharmaceutical companies. You had a couple of retailers, Walmart, Coke were in there. Uh, and then you move to now, which is really what everyone touts as the digital age, and you have a look at the top 10 companies in the world today, and depending on who you ask, which search engine you go to, you'll pretty much get consistent answers. At least 8 of the top 10 are all tech-based companies. So there's still an oil-based company out of Saudi Arabia that's up there. Warren Buffett's got an investment company, but all the others, Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, they're all the top companies in the world at the moment. Interestingly, though, that's from a market cap point of view. From a revenue perspective, it's still majority retail, energy, oil and gas, healthcare. Walmart was in there 30 years ago. It's still there from a revenue point of view, but just not a market cap perspective. So the world is definitely moving more into this digital age, and today, you really can't conduct business without it. That is obviously evident here around the biggest concerns in the boardroom are definitely around it, and the challenge of AI is what we're going to talk a lot about today in relation to that security perspective. And so I thought the next thing just to touch on then is really, just outlining what it is that we're really protecting ourselves against. Like, what are we protecting? And so, the key things that we're protecting are the data and the intellectual property, the identity, and a lot of the time it's the identities within our organizations that are compromised in order to gain access to the data and the intellectual property. And that then has impacts on brand and trust. It has impacts on our business operations if there's, if there's some sort of cyber breach, our legal liabilities and our regulatory requirements, and ultimately, the impact can be financial loss. So yeah, as we go through today, it's probably just good to have that in the back of your mind. What are we actually protecting, and what are the key strategies that we need to be looking at to maximize the protection. So then, at IT Integrity, a lot of our back-end systems and processes, because we are managing, the security for a broad range of clients, we're using a solution called Kaseya, or platform vendor called Kaseya, and they are one of the leading platforms in the world. So some of the stats that you're about to see are off the back of their report that they released for 2026. And this was off the back of over 700 organizations that were part of the data pool, and 300 and what was it? I think 370 odd managed service providers. So quite a decent pool of data to come up with these. And that's across the world as well. This is a global survey. So very much a global perspective across the cybersecurity. Um, Yeah, these were the key themes that were produced in their report: the human factor, penetration testing, the downtime cost, the AI paradox, which again is what we're covering off a fair bit today, and phishing. And really the common thread, no matter what sort of threat landscape reports that you look at the moment, really the human factor, and the breaches and the compromise is coming through social engineering and phishing attempts and people clicking on things that they shouldn't be clicking on. That is primarily the way that breaches are occurring. So that is clearly the thing that we need to mitigate and educate internally about. And yeah, that really just leads to this next slide. There's phishing messages and the email compromisation, two of the biggest areas here, from an impact point of view. And interestingly, it's sort of 1 in 5, nearly 1 in 4, around this personal information or credential theft. And I think whether it's at a consumer personal level or an organizational level, identity management and identity protection is really one of the key things that we need to be focused on, because at the end of the day, that's normally the gateway and the entry point into most of the compromises. So this was an interesting piece that came out in their report as well, around ransomware and the fact that the frequency of ransomware taking place across the data pool that was surveyed reduced by 34%. But the amount of people paying out, paying that ransom, actually increased. And so, I think as technology is progressing, the trend is to move from on-premise infrastructure to cloud-based solutions, more as a service type of offerings. Therefore, what's happening is we're really moving more to utilizing third parties to provide us with our technology and to manage that technology platform, and that provides a whole bunch of advantages as far as the ability to scale quickly. There's a lot of the underpinning, responsibility for buying hardware and compute and storage and all that sort of stuff that's in the hands of the third parties. But that also then means that the source of compromise is moving to the third parties equally, right? And in some cases exponentially. And that could also explain the increase in the paid ransoms, because then you've got third parties that are obviously holding a lot of client data, and a lot of data breaches in today's world are often the result of a third party being breached. But interestingly, you as an organization, if you have PII data sitting with that vendor, the accountability and the responsibility for that data still sits with you. So if one of your third parties is breached, there's still obligations for that notification on you as an organization. All good things to really understand. And I think that that is, again, a big part of the reason why it's right up there as far as the concerning factor for boards and leadership teams at the moment. Yeah. So the AI factor and how it's helping criminals. Like this is, AI is just advancing the ability to generate code just through normal language these days is there. And there's a few other slides that we've got coming up that are going to talk about that. I had a look at a CrowdStrike 2026 threat landscape report just recently as well, and it was saying 89%. There's an 89% increase in attacks by AI-enabled adversaries in the last year. 89% increase. The average time to break in dropped to 29 minutes, which was 65% faster than it was the year before. And they called out that some of the breakouts were as low as 27 seconds. So the hackers now are not as sophisticated. They don't need to be as smart as they used to be. They're able to utilize AI to really get in there and perform these scams and this cybercrime. The other key stat that I saw in the CrowdStrike report, which was interesting, was that 82% of the detections in 2025 were malware free. And so again, that's through a lot of these AI bots, and that's up from up 51% from 2020. So it's really this is the trend. AI is the thing that is assisting the cyber attacks, and it's just getting more and more sophisticated. And so the tool sets that we use need to be as sophisticated to be able to combat them.
Yeah, and it's certainly a case of getting in quicker, but also once a threat has been realized, then moving around internally quicker as well. So that's the vector there.
Yeah.
Jump to the next one, please.
Yeah. This presentation is obviously going to be available after we provide it, and there are some links that I think Zara, one of our marketing team members, is going to be post into the chat. Um, but these are just some examples of some AI enabled attacks, and uh, some scary ones.
Yeah.
There's an example of an article that was published in the Guardian, that we've got sitting here, where a video call was established, using deepfake AI, and a person was then effectively, there was a whole, if you read the article, there's a whole process behind it and things that they did in the lead up to having this call, to position messaging to the person that was pulled into the conference call. But effectively using video as well as voice, to convince this person to perform a series of transactions over the course of that meeting, that resulted in, I think it was £20 million being transferred. So quite interestingly, there's more and more of this, deep fake AI use to scam people, and I think it was even the US President Joe Biden's voice was used for campaigns, in America. So more and more of that is going to happen, and I think everybody's hearing those sort of stories these days. Then, from a phishing point of view, it's getting harder and harder. It's getting um, more and more
Sophisticated.
sophisticated is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they
Yeah.
just, really difficult to spot where the issues are.
Mm.
I was in a meeting with another customer, and they had an example, up on the screen of a phishing email, and asking, people, in the executives that were on this meeting, to spot the issues in this email, and most of them couldn't. So really, really telling. And these are, people that are sitting in senior C-level roles, on leadership teams.
Yeah. Yeah. 2001 when we started working together, Scott. It was an email from a Nigerian prince where informing you that you had $30 million if you gave him your credit card details. But now it's a lot more sophisticated than that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, these are just some other examples here. I'll probably get through these pretty quickly, because I think, Steve, you've got a fair bit to cover. But
Mm.
these days now, as I said before, there are applications there. The AI capability that's built into these things means that they're rewriting themselves. They're able to adjust on the fly, and combat the issues that they're seeing when they're trying to get in. And the social engineering is really the biggest thing, right? The majority of breaches are as a result of social engineering. That is what is the primary way. And again, as I said, if you really go through and look at most of the threat landscape reports over from the last year, social engineering is the key way that people are being breached.
Yeah. Even in our everyday lives at the moment, I hear a new song on Spotify and wonder, is it an AI song or is it a true artist and things like that. It's just incredible.
Yeah. So then we've got a couple of slides here around some key considerations, but I think at the end of this presentation, we've got some material that really then highlights the sort of core categories that need to be focused on from an overarching security and privacy program perspective. But again, just from a key consideration point of view, the identity management, and the human factor piece is really key. Like, this is the entry point of how people are getting in at the moment. So anything that we can do to mitigate that, educate, and use tools to identify, detect, and then protect the environment. That is really where the majority of the breaches are coming in. From a data and a privacy point of view, I think the other thing is really understanding what the key data elements are for a breach notification, because there's legislation around notifiable data breaches, and I think it's not always well known within organizations what constitutes a notifiable data breach. And so, there are things that, and this is where you need to really assess the systems that you're using and the data that's being stored in those systems to understand whether or not those systems are holding data which would be required to be notified in the event of a breach. And that sort of data comes down to things like passport numbers, driver's license numbers, any other sort of government identifiers, names and addresses and of people and phone numbers, so contact information, financial information, bank accounts, credit card details, bank statements, those sorts of things, and then obviously sensitive information around health and tax file numbers and confidential data that you don't want to be disclosed in a public forum, intellectual property type of data. And then the last piece is around system and account credentials. Obviously, these are more keys to the environment again, so they're highly sensitive. Um, Third-party data risk I talked about a little bit before, and the message here is that just by outsourcing the services doesn't mean that you're outsourcing the accountability. You're still accountable for breaches that are caused by third parties. So really having a solid way of assessing those third parties is key. And then the physical security and the convergence of physical and digital security is really another key area. It used to be that you just had locks on doors, and even for those that have swipe card systems, quite often those systems were completely segregated away from the rest of the network. But the ability now to be able to integrate those things, and as part of your onboarding, allocating the same level of access at a physical level to what you might do from a system perspective is possible. Last year in Gartner's threat landscape report, the third-party data risk and the physical security piece were two of the highest ones that they listed in theirs. And then the standards and frameworks, really that there's a lot of standards and frameworks that are out there: NIST, Essential 8, ISO. We'll cover off on a little bit of that as we get to the end of this as well. The message here is really there needs to be a continuous security program and not just one-off things. And I think that's going to flow through in what Steve sort of talks about a little bit as we keep going. The insurers and the regulators are getting more and more pointed as well around what they're expecting. Sorry, Steve. Yeah. So this was something that we have put together, and again, this is the approach that we are taking. As I said, there's an internal accountability from an in-house perspective that you can't outsource and that you can't get away from. There are outsourced tools and services that you can absolutely use, but at the end of the day, there's that internal accountability which requires both governance and management. We have got a security and privacy program that we're using to help clients with that, and again, we'll touch on that towards the end. But from an outsourced tools and services point of view, in today's world now, up until now, there have been lots of disparate systems all over the place, and so you might have 5 to 10 different solutions that you're using. The more that we can consolidate and combine those tools and services into a single platform, the more that we're going to be able to use things like AI to get a lens across the whole lot. And so that's really important moving forward. And now I
Awesome.
think that's over to you, Steve.
Yes, it is. Thanks, Scott. That's great. Took a few notes. You've given me some ideas for some of the stuff I'll touch on as well a bit later on. But yeah, fighting AI with AI, evidenced in Scott's discussion there, the pace at which threat actors are leveraging AI to get the advantage. So it's equally as important that we adopt and take on AI opportunities to defend against that. So we'll get into a little bit about that now. So there's a multitude, or we're data rich these days when it comes to security, and as sort of Scott said just there, it's often disparate. We've got logs across infrastructure, we've got IoT, OT inputs, we've got environmental sensors, we've got all your SaaS-based and identity-based controls, creating information in our organizations, creating reports and monitoring outcomes. Often AI is sitting on that, on those things, but not in a consolidated fashion. Scott sort of mentioned around how attackers are using AI, automating phishing, they're scanning for vulnerabilities at scale. They're using much more complex methodologies to successfully attack, but then also much more complex capability to speed up the attack as well once they've made a breach. And then I think also plays back into what Scott was saying, or what the data's showing us around that ransomware payout figure. No doubt the complexity of getting your keys back has increased, so that payout option is more prevalent than it was before. So yeah, as I said, masses of information coming in. From a human perspective, if you're looking at it, data, you can probably interpret 4 or 5 different inputs, and that's called a graph. AI can drink a fire hose worth of graphs to come out with some trends and analysis and detect threats that we might not otherwise see. And as we sort of said, having AI giving the tool set an ability across a multitude of those inputs and data sets is where it really becomes the difference. One of the key considerations in that is being able to prioritize threats versus noise. So across multiple data sets, you're going to get trends and things that are happening, and AI can really accelerate working out where to prioritize your human investigation. So moving on. It's really interesting to see, I think it's very clear around the pace that attackers are using AI to enhance their sophistication and success. But the data that the Kaseya report indicates, we're not using that same pace to protect ourselves. So it seems a little bit lacking. This is currently how organizations are using AI in their security posture, and you'll see the results are pretty skint. So 49% with email and spam detection, endpoint protection 34%, and the list goes on. I won't read them all out to you. What it definitely shows is that the uptake varies across the different tools, and therefore, alludes to it's a bit of a fragmented approach, as Scott was sort of saying earlier in his presentation, and definitely well below what you'd expect in the current landscape and the types of threats we're seeing. Looking at some of the barriers around, the follow-on question around that uptake was, what are the barriers? What's stopping people from making the investment into AI and upping their security posture? A lot of it is trust-based, so the accuracy of the threat AI is advancing at such a rapid pace that the maturity of its false positives, if you will, is getting better and better. So those gaps are closing on a daily basis, but it doesn't discount the need for human interaction. It's paramount when dealing with these things. A lot of the tools that we're using and the reported stat at the moment is, AI tools can isolate a threat or a P1, if you'll call it that, from the AI perspective within a couple of minutes, is the reported stat at the moment. And then we can apply human intervention to work out what to do next. So, obviously, with recommendation from AI. We've had experiences where we've had clients come to us, they had a threat actor in their environment for 45 days, slowly taking steps towards um, getting the keys to the castle and crypto locking them properly. That particular organization was an 18-month rebuild before they had their tech stack back up. You can imagine the financial, brand, and the people consequences of that kind of journey. The other part is the human oversight demands. As we sort of said again, leading into that fragmented approach of AI. So many of the tools that we're using are implementing AI capabilities now, but it still leaves this human oversight demand increase. So the more AI that is used in segregation from itself or from other AI capabilities, the more things we have to manage and provide that intervention on. And that leads to the mentality of consolidation even further. And then finally, cost creep across multiple AI agents, services. Multiple tools, multiple licensing costs, et cetera, et cetera. And then beyond that, as many of you know, there's a lot of wraparound AI tooling, so SOCs, SIEMs, all those kinds of things that can surround your environment. But even then, there is always holes or limited integrations or gaps in that tool set. So looking to where we can close those is paramount too. Scott talked about some of the blind spots, certainly from a third party perspective. We're all, even our organization leverages partners to achieve what we do. So maintaining that partner health, having some standards that those partners from a security posture and perspective must adhere to is fundamental. But more so is the continuality of that assessment, making sure that as your security posture matures and grows, that they are evolving with you, and that you're checking regularly that they're maintaining that standard. With the accountability falling back on your organization, it's key that this falls within your responsibility to maintain and manage. One of the big things that sort of popped out of what Scott was saying earlier on before is, a lot of the threat is around social engineering, around people and protecting our people. Sometimes, and especially this day and age with BYOD, for example, everywhere, sometimes that threat is actually external to the organization. Everybody's got a payslip or something like that in their personal information, and often, it's the education outside of the organization that could ultimately lead to a crack inside. So having that clear view of that, opening up that blind spot a little bit more is key. One of the things that's just really been fascinating me over the last little while, years ago, and certainly a quarter of a century ago when Scott started this organization, the adoption and change management was just huge with technology. Getting people to embrace new technologies was a structured and rich program of work, and it still is in a lot of cases. But there's certain things like Microsoft Teams and things that are more native to people's experience where that's not the case. Alarmingly for organizations, and this is, I think, one of the major blind spots, is in the Microsoft Work Index report. They highlighted that 80% of employees are bringing their own AI to work. So if you can imagine the threat that opens up from not only a sovereignty perspective, again, the accountability relies on us. So those tools and that, if you think about BYO AI, it's shadow IT on steroids. the implications and the pace of that risk is amplified dramatically. So it really leans back into how do we govern and how do we control our tech stack and how our organizations are using technology to do what they do.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve. Like, we see it all the time, walking into meetings with clients, and there are AI note takers. Some of them might even have them on here right now that are yeah taking notes for the meetings, and often those AI note takers, they're not company approved. You don't know where that data's going. It's quite likely not going to be local in country either. So having that AI strategy and policy around that is becoming more and more important.
Absolutely. All right. So again, as I sort of said in the intro, we've got an approach. Obviously, as a steward of many of our clients' organisations, we need to be at the forefront of this discussion. So we've got a something we'll talk you through now that we're releasing in 2026. But that approach is universal to organisations. So let's go through it. So IT Integrity Select. So again, we've been touching on the theme people, process, and technology, the tools all through this discussion, and that's certainly what this approach and methodology is all about. Fixed pricing, your core tooling in a consolidated fashion so that the AI overlay can garner more information, react more maturely, and reduce the human load or demand that sits on the other side of that, coupled with professional and technical services to help complement that tool set and guide organizations on that capability and capacity increase through improvement and maturity. And then certainly the final bit, the governance, keeping that all aligned to where the organization's going, keeping abreast of where threats might be evolving and coming up in your organization. So I'll talk you through the IT Integrity Select model. It essentially comes in four parts, with the tooling being broken into end user, endpoint rather, end user support. So we'll talk through those, and Scott, I might actually flick back to you when I get to the governance section for part four. So yeah, certainly the asset, the hard infrastructure, the devices. So that's the first part. We'll be very familiar with a lot of the things up there: antivirus, endpoint protection, patch management, backups, so on and so forth. Again, the suite is really focused on consolidating all of these tools that we use so that the AI agents over the top of it can be more sophisticated, can understand more, lineage through multiple surfaces. So a big part of that, which I've already mentioned in that cost creep discussion, was the tool sprawling. Rather than have all these tools sit individually with AI, we could now consolidate those for a more holistic protection. In the interest of time, I will jump straight into the user side of that, and this is key as well. Definitely, Scott mentioned identity is number one, and more so. That's getting harder to manage with getting called into meetings where you think you're talking to the right people and you're not. So we've got to be identity first and foremost. So the second part of our tooling in this IT Integrity Select bundle really focuses around consolidating across what we typically manage from an identity perspective. So your SaaS integrations, your backup and recovery capabilities, your email security, and your Entra IDs and so on and so forth. Certainly across both sets of these toolings, there's the surrounding Microsoft capabilities that complement this, the Kaseya suite that we're using. But again, it's not necessarily the product that we're talking about here. It's about the approach of having that consolidated AI capability. So yeah, it's certainly there's add-ons that you can put in and around all of this to even further enhance the outcome. Part three, and this is about complementing that consolidated tool set to improve the way you deliver and mature as an organization. It very much depends on how you structure your organization and your team internally, be this an in-house or an outsourced or a co-managed outcome. It's almost certain that you'll need some kind of partner across one of these pillars to expand your capability and capacity as you go. But yeah, keeping a clear view of where the people wrap around the tooling across support, compliance, and your strategic planning is essential. So part of our approach is certainly to have those structures and those pillars supporting the tooling and the findings. So Scott, I'll throw to you for a bit
Sure.
of a deep dive into
Yeah.
the governance.
Yeah, and I think as Steve has just said there, at the end of the day, there's that internal accountability, but then utilizing partners that have products and services to assist you is what everybody needs to do, right? So, from our side, as Steve mentioned, also right at the very beginning. We see ourselves as a governance-led organization. Often the discussions that we're having, really start at the top with boards and executives, are getting an understanding of what they're trying to do with the business, and then really helping them to make sure that they're making the right decisions when it comes to their technology investment, and then governing governing that investment and managing that investment. So this slide is really just around the way that we approach it and the key things that are part of that governance and management tool set, if you like. And so yeah, you'll see with what Steve put right in a couple of slides before, we're typically assisting clients through that expansion of capability and capacity, to make sure that all the right things are in place and that the right things are being covered. The next slide here is probably the money slide for everybody. This is so out of the framework and the domains that we've established for everything that we look after across the board. And as Steve said, we provide a holistic offering to clients all the way from that boardroom to the front line. One of the key pillars is our security and privacy pillar. And interestingly, I'll call out that we say security and privacy. It's not cyber security, because security is more than just cyber. The whole physical element is incorporated into that as well. And so these are the eight categories that we have broken that security and privacy pillar into. And again, some of these you can certainly outsource, you can co-manage, but typically, the accountability, particularly around the governance, risk, and compliance piece, sits internally. The security and awareness training piece at the end there, that really is the key. As we said, the entry points, the compromisations are taking place, with that identity being compromised. So that's the more that you can mitigate that by training people and educating the team. That's where the best results come through.
Absolutely. Um, all right. So yeah, what we're offering on the back of this, it's so much in this that we haven't touched on. As we're trying to give you a broad sweep and cover as much ground in a short time as we possibly could. But there's so much more to dig into, and certainly how that applies in each of our organisations. So on the back of this, we're offering an executive level review of your current investments, and a bit of a sanity check across that privacy and security pillar, as well as back into that tooling. So yeah, feel free to reach out if there's any interest there. We'd love to talk you through it. And give you some real tangible ways that you can improve your maturity in this space. We're also, as I sort of mentioned earlier, we've had a great response to this webinar, and we're thrilled that you could all make the time to be here. And we've got good news is we've got more to come. So there's heaps of thought leadership, and we'll try to make all of these as educational and as meaningful to your outcomes as we can. But the next couple coming up, feel free to jump in there and scan these codes, but you'll certainly be on the emails as well. But yeah, we've got some data decisions work coming up, preparing your organization for the future, getting that foundation right so that you can't, so that you can leverage AI as a talent, not just a tool within your organization, and how to build that GMO practice maturely. So again, that's where we cut our teeth a quarter of a century ago. So much IP and capability in this governance model. So we'd love to talk to you more about that. So we've got 9 valuable minutes left. Yeah, happy to sort of field any Q&A. We've got our team as well from a technical perspective. We've got some of our consultants online as well. So yeah, happy to talk through.
I can see there was some questions that have been asked in the chat and some answers that Zara's pushed back through as well, which has been good, just around where the stats came from. There's quite a number of other links that are that we can provide as part of the presentation as well, from where some of the information came from that we talked about.
Well, if there's no prevalent questions coming through, I'm going to jump back to that offer that we've got so that those of you that didn't get the QR code can jump on it now. So yeah, Scott, mate, well done. Great. Yeah, great presentation. Lots in there, as I said. So glad to be a part of it, and hope it benefited everybody else in the room as well.